In just 3 days, Ariel was supposed to be married off to a man old enough to be her grandfather, a man whose touch made her skin crawl, a man whose eyes didn't look at her with love, but with ownership. That night, standing alone in her chamber, Ariel stared at herself in the mirror as her trembling fingers fixed the last jewel into her chestnut hair. The girl staring back at her barely looked familiar. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her face had gone pale, and her lips were pressed into a thin, determined line. This was not the obedient daughter of Lord Cedric of Valamore. This was a girl standing at the edge of her own life with only one final chance to choose it for herself. "In 3 days," she whispered, "I will belong to Lord Bartholomew." Even saying the words made her feel sick. She could still remember the betrothal dinner, the old man's damp fingers brushing against her face as if he already owned her, the way his gaze had moved over her body with disgusting confidence, the way her stomach had twisted while everyone else sat there acting as if this was normal. That night, Ariel had tried to tell herself that she would survive. After all, many women survived marriages they never wanted, but surviving was not the same as living, and Ariel had already tasted what living felt like. Thomas. For months, Thomas had been her secret escape from a life that never truly belonged to her. In moonlit gardens, hidden behind rose bushes, and in quiet shadows near the stables, he had whispered promises into her ear and kissed her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. He had written letters full of sweet words and impossible dreams. Letters Ariel had hidden in books and reread again and again until the ink felt as if it lived inside her heart. He had promised her a different life. He had promised her freedom. He had promised her love. And most of all, he had promised her that when the time came, he would be waiting. A quiet knock came at the door. Eliza, the youngest maid in the household, slipped into the room carrying a tray of tea only for show. Neither of them intended to touch it. "The guards at the East Tower will change shifts in 1 hour," Eliza whispered nervously. "You'll have only a few minutes to cross the servant passage and get into the tunnels." Ariel nodded, though her throat felt too tight to speak. Only a few minutes stood between her and freedom. "And Thomas?" Ariel asked softly. "Did you give him my message?" Eliza nodded. "I placed it in his hand myself this morning. He said he'll be waiting for you at the tavern near the edge of the village." Relief flooded Ariel so quickly that for 1 second she thought she might collapse. "He'll be there. He loves me. This will work." And yet, deep inside, a small voice whispered the one thought she had been trying to silence for days. What if it doesn't? Ariel pushed the thought away with force. Not now. Not after all the planning. Not after all the nights spent memorizing guard schedules, hiding coins, collecting jewels, and building this one desperate chance to escape. Under her cloak, tied tightly at her waist, rested a velvet pouch filled with everything she owned in the world: gold, jewels, the little fortune she had secretly protected for years. She had planned to give it all to Thomas, because she believed freedom with him would be worth more than anything else. Eliza looked at her carefully. "You can still change your mind." Ariel shook her head. "If I stay, I lose everything. If I go, at least the choice will be mine." Eliza's eyes filled with tears. "Then I hope the love waiting for you is real." Ariel hoped so too, because if it wasn't, she had nothing left. When the time came, Ariel pulled on her dark cloak, lowered the hood, and followed Eliza out into the quiet castle halls. Every sound felt too loud that night: the crackle of the fireplaces, the wind tapping against tall windows, the distant footsteps of servants somewhere deep in the corridors. At last, Eliza stopped before an old faded tapestry hanging in a rarely used passage. She pulled it aside, revealing a narrow wooden door hidden behind it. 15 minutes, Eliza whispered. "No more." Ariel took Eliza's hands and squeezed them tightly. "Thank you." Then, before fear could stop her, she stepped into the darkness. The tunnel was narrow, cold, and full of ancient dust. Stones scraped her fingers and brushed against her sleeves as she hurried through. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought it might betray her escape. As a little girl, these tunnels had once felt exciting, like the secret entrance to some adventure. Tonight, they were the only path between one prison and another possible life. When she finally reached the hidden exit near the outer stables and pushed the old door open, the night air rushed over her face like a shock. Freedom! Or at least what she believed was freedom. The village streets were mostly empty. Ariel kept her hood low and walked as fast as she could, though her shoes had never been made for running across stone roads in the dark. At the edge of the village stood the tavern Thomas had named in his letter. Warm light spilled from its windows, laughter and music drifted into the street. Ariel stopped just outside and pressed her hand to the velvet pouch at her waist. This is it. Thomas is waiting. Before dawn, we'll be gone. She drew in one long breath and pushed the door open. Heat hit her first, then the smell of smoke, beer, sweat, and crowded bodies. Her eyes searched the room, and there he was. Thomas sat in the far corner with two other men at his table. For a brief second, relief surged through her. He came, but that relief lasted only a moment, because something felt wrong. Thomas was too relaxed, too casual, too comfortable. He wasn't watching the door like a man ready to run for his life. And he wasn't alone. Why did he bring two strangers? Ariel's chest tightened. Instead of going straight to him, she moved quietly through the room and slipped behind a thick wooden pillar, close enough to hear without being seen. Then she listened. She should be here any minute now, Thomas said, glancing toward the door with a smirk. Probably crawling through the castle tunnels right now thinking she's clever. One of the men laughed loudly. And she really believes you love her? Thomas leaned back in his chair and grinned in a way Ariel had never seen before. Completely. The men laughed harder. Ariel froze. She looks at me like I'm some kind of hero from one of those silly noble romances, Thomas continued mockingly. Thomas, save me. Thomas, take me away. Thomas, I love you. He copied her voice cruelly, and the table exploded with laughter. Ariel felt the blood drain from her face. No, this can't be real. The older man wiped tears from his eyes. So the plan stays the same? Of course, Thomas said, taking a drink. We help her leave. We act like guards. We escort her north so she feels safe. And once you reach the forest? The younger man asked. Thomas's smile turned cold. Once we're deep enough in Thornwood, we take everything. Every coin. Every jewel. Then we leave her there. The men nodded eagerly. And split it 3 ways, Thomas added. Enough money to live comfortably for years. What if she talks afterward? One of them asked. Thomas shrugged. Who will believe her? A noble girl who ran away with her lover and got abandoned. They'll say shame drove her mad. And by the time anyone cares, we'll be long gone. Their laughter rang in Ariel's ears like a blade being dragged across glass. The secret meetings, the letters, the kisses, the promises. Every single one of them had been a lie. He had never loved her. He had only studied her long enough to know exactly how to ruin her. Tears burned in her eyes, but then something inside her changed. The pain sharpened. It hardened. It turned into anger. They would not take her. They would not get her gold, and they would never get the pleasure of watching her break. Ariel turned and rushed out of the tavern before Thomas could see her. Outside, the cold night air struck her face, but it did nothing to calm the storm inside her chest. She walked without direction, tears spilling down her cheeks, her breathing uneven, her mind spiraling. What now? She could not go back to Thomas. She could not return to the castle and quietly accept marriage to Bartholomew. She could not stay here until dawn and hope no one found her. Everything had fallen apart. And in the middle of that dark street, blinded by tears and heartbreak, Ariel walked straight into someone. The impact nearly sent her to the ground, but a strong hand caught her arm and held her steady. Careful, said a deep voice. Please, Ariel whispered, trying to pull away. Let me go. But the hand did not release her. It was firm, steady, unmovable, but not cruel. You're crying, the man said. It was not a question. Ariel turned her face away. That is none of your concern. Look at me. There was power in his voice, but there was also something else. Something calm. Something solid. A gentle touch lifted her chin. Ariel resisted for only a second before pure exhaustion won. She opened her eyes and forgot how to breathe. The man before her was tall and broad, with golden hair brushing his shoulders and eyes like melted amber in the torchlight. Even dressed simply, there was nothing ordinary about him. Power clung to him. Nobility lived in the way he stood. Control was written into every line of his body. "What happened?" he asked again, softer this time. And maybe it was the betrayal still tearing through her chest. Maybe it was the fact that she had nowhere left to go. Or maybe it was simply that this stranger was looking at her as though the truth mattered. Whatever it was, Ariel broke. She told him everything. She told him about her father and the marriage waiting in 3 days. She told him about Lord Bartholomew. She told him about Thomas, the tavern, the lies, the plan to rob her and leave her in the forest. Her words came out fast, broken, desperate. "I would rather die free," she whispered, "than live as the property of a man I despise." And the stranger listened. He did not interrupt. He did not laugh. He did not judge. Inside Archer, something ancient and fierce rose like flame. The moment she crashed into him, he had felt it, known it. His mate. He should have been at camp that night preparing for morning negotiations. Instead, needing one last moment away from the weight of being king, he had slipped out alone. And fate had led Ariel straight into his arms. His mate. This broken, trembling girl with brave eyes and a wounded heart. Every word she spoke fed his fury. He wanted names. He wanted justice. He wanted the men in that tavern dragged into the street. But first, she needed to be safe. When Ariel finished speaking, she untied the velvet pouch from her waist and held it out with shaking hands. "This is everything I have," she said. "Gold, jewels, all of it." Archer looked down at the pouch, then back at her face. "I'll give it to you," Ariel whispered, lifting her chin with the last strength she had left. "If you marry me." For one moment, Archer simply stared. His mate was trying to buy him as a husband. The irony was so unexpected, so sharp, so strangely perfect, that a short laugh escaped him. Ariel's eyes flashed with hurt. "Why are you laughing?" "I'm not laughing at you," Archer said gently. "I'm laughing at fate." Then his expression changed. "What if I told you there is something stronger than marriage?" he asked. "Something your father, Bartholomew, and no law in this land can break?" Ariel frowned. "What do you mean?" "The claiming bond." Her eyes widened. "I thought that was only an old story." "It's real." She studied him more closely. "Only pure-blood alphas know how to make that bond." "Yes. You're an alpha." "Yes." The words settled between them. Ariel swallowed. "If you make this bond with me, my father can't force me to marry Bartholomew." "No." "The contract becomes useless." "Yes." "And once it's done, no one can undo it?" "No one." Ariel went silent. This was deeper than marriage, more dangerous, more permanent, and still it was her choice. That mattered more than anything. Archer looked at her carefully. "I won't do this unless you truly mean it. Not because panic is pushing you. I won't become another cage." Ariel closed her eyes for a second, forcing herself to think through the fear, the pain, the betrayal. Then she looked directly at him and said, "I mean it. I choose this." Archer nodded once and led her away from the village toward a clearing washed in moonlight. Marcus and 2 guards were already waiting there. Ariel noticed the way Marcus immediately stepped aside for the stranger, the respect in his posture, but her mind was too full to understand it yet. Archer turned to her beneath the silver light. "The bond is made through a bite," he said, touching the place where her neck met her shoulder. "Once done, it stands above every noble agreement and every human law." Ariel's pulse raced. "Then do it," she whispered. "I choose this." Archer stepped closer and gently moved her hair aside. The whole clearing seemed to go still. The moon watched from above. The night itself felt ancient. "Under the moon," Archer said, his voice deep and powerful. "I claim you." Then he bit her. Ariel gasped. Not from pain, from sensation. Heat rushed through her body in one fierce wave, spreading from the mark to every part of her. The world sharpened instantly. She could hear the wind moving through leaves. She could hear his breathing. She could hear her own heart, and another one, steady and powerful, beating like it belonged beside hers. And then came feelings that were not her own. protection, possession, strength, a fierce certainty that no one would ever hurt her again. When Archer pulled back, Ariel touched the mark on her neck with trembling fingers. "What is this?" she whispered. "The bond," he said. "You can feel me now, and I can feel you." It was true. She could feel him in a way that made no sense and yet felt more real than anything else in her life. His control, his steadiness, his promise. Tears filled her eyes. "It worked," she whispered. "I'm free." Archer looked at her with absolute certainty. "Yes," he said. "You are." That night, Ariel returned to the castle under Marcus's protection, too exhausted to think clearly. Lying in bed, she pressed her fingers to the hidden mark on her neck and felt Archer through the bond like a steady flame somewhere far away. For the first time in weeks, she slept without fear. Morning came too soon. Eliza woke her in a rush. "My lady, your father demands your presence in the Great Hall immediately. There is an important guest." Ariel sat up fast, hand flying to the mark beneath her collar. Through the bond, she felt calm, strength, and beneath it, something that felt almost like quiet amusement. Archer. She dressed quickly in a high-collared gown and followed Eliza down to the Great Hall. The room was already crowded when she arrived. Nobles stood whispering in fine clothes. Servants rushed about. The whole hall was heavy with tension. Lord Bartholomew stood near the front, wrapped in expensive fabric and wearing the same ugly smile. Thomas was there too, standing among the servants. When he saw Ariel, he gave her a small wink. He still believed she was fooled. Ariel's anger turned cold and sharp. At the front of the room, Lord Cedric looked more nervous than she had ever seen him. Sweat glistened on his brow. "King Archer of Thornhaven is arriving for important negotiations," he told Ariel sharply. "Stand where I placed you. Speak only if spoken to." King Archer. The bond inside her pulsed at the name. He was close. Very close. Then, as she shifted, the collar of her dress slipped. An older maid saw the mark first. Her eyes widened in horror. "My lord," the maid whispered. "Your daughter. She bears a mark." The room fell into complete silence. Lord Cedric strode over, grabbed Ariel by the shoulder and yanked down her collar. The mark was exposed for all to see. Fresh, deep, unmistakable. His face twisted in rage. "What have you done?" Ariel lifted her chin. "I chose my own fate." Lord Bartholomew stepped forward, furious. "Then our contract is void." "That," Ariel said coldly, "was exactly the point." The slap came fast and hard. Her father's hand struck her cheek with enough force to turn her head. "You foolish girl," he shouted. "You've ruined everything." And in that exact moment, the great hall doors slammed open. Archer entered. But this time, he was not the stranger from the dark street. He was a king. Black and gold covered him like a declaration of power. A royal cloak flowed behind him. His amber eyes burned with barely contained fury. At his side stood Marcus in Thornhaven colours, followed by royal guards. The room reacted instantly. Nobles bowed, servants knelt. Lord Cedric dropped to his knees so fast he nearly stumbled. But Archer did not look at any of them. Only Ariel. He crossed the hall in slow, deliberate steps and stopped in front of her. Then, with a gentleness that clashed with the fury radiating from him, he touched the red mark on her cheek. "Who," he asked in a low, deadly voice, "dared to strike you?" No one answered. The silence turned heavy. Archer lifted his gaze slightly. "I asked who touched her." Lord Cedric swallowed hard. "Your Majesty, I didn't know." Archer turned slowly toward him. "So, if she had not been mine, striking her would have been acceptable." Cedric opened his mouth, but no words came. Then Archer turned back to Ariel and deliberately drew her collar farther aside, exposing the mark fully to the room. "She bears my claim," he declared. "She is my mate." Gasps erupted. Then came the words that stunned the entire hall. "And she is my queen." Ariel's breath caught. Queen. The whispers spread everywhere. Lord Bartholomew looked like the ground had opened beneath him. Archer turned his icy gaze on him. "Any contract you thought you had over her is worthless. Forget her." Bartholomew nearly tripped over himself, rushing backward. Then Archer looked back at Ariel, and for a moment the king disappeared, leaving only the man from the dark street. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. Ariel stared at him. "You were the king," she whispered. "All along. Yes. I offered you gold. And I accepted," Archer said, "because you chose me before you knew the crown." Then he held out his hand. "Come with me." This time Ariel gave him her hand without fear. When the chamber doors closed behind them, silence filled the room. Then Ariel turned to face him. "You smiled that night," she said. "You knew who you were, and you still let me offer you gold." Archer didn't deny it. "I smiled because fate has a strange sense of humour," he said. "My mate, the woman chosen for me by the moon itself, tried to buy me with jewels." Ariel stared at him. "Mate?" Archer stepped closer. "You are more than my claimed one. You are my true mate." Those words landed deeply. "If I had told you everything in that moment," he continued, "you would have stopped being honest. You would have started thinking about power, titles, consequences. I wanted your choice before any of that touched it." Ariel looked at him carefully. He had hidden the truth, but he had also given her something no one else had ever truly given her: a choice. Slowly, the anger inside her began to soften. She extended her hand with formal dryness. "Lady Ariel of Valamore." A smile touched Archer's mouth. He took her hand and pressed a kiss to her fingers. "King Archer of Thornhaven," he said. "Your mate? And occasionally an idiot." A small laugh escaped Ariel before she could stop it, and then, moved by something warm and unexplainable, she leaned forward and kissed him. At first, it was gentle, careful, almost uncertain. Then Archer answered. His hand slid to the back of her head. The other settled at her waist and pulled her closer. The kiss deepened at once, strong and hungry, like all the restraint of the past night had finally broken. Ariel's hands rose to his chest, feeling the heat and strength beneath the fabric. By the time they pulled apart, both breathing harder, the room felt changed. So did she. This did not feel like another trap. It felt like the beginning of something real. But one thing still remained. Thomas. The moment the name crossed the silence, Archer's expression darkened. "He will answer for what he did," Archer said. Ariel met his eyes. "I want to be there." Pride flickered in his face. "Then you will." 1 hour later, the great hall was full again. Not just nobles this time, but servants, guards, even villagers. Everyone had come to witness the trial. Ariel entered beside Archer, her hand in his, the mark on her neck now visible for everyone to see. At the front stood 2 thrones, one for the king, one for the future queen. Archer seated Ariel first, then took his place beside her. Thomas was dragged in under guard. The moment he saw Ariel sitting beside the king, his face went white. Now he understood exactly what he had lost. Archer rose. "Thomas, son of William," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. "You stand accused of deception, theft, conspiracy, and planning the abandonment of Lady Ariel of Valamore, my mate. How do you answer?" Thomas tried to speak. I didn't know." Archer cut him off. "Did you lie to her?" Thomas lowered his eyes. "Yes." "Did you plan to steal her wealth?" "Yes." "Did you intend to abandon her, far from home, and leave her helpless?" Thomas hesitated, then whispered, "Yes." A witness from the tavern was brought forward and repeated everything he had overheard. The hall stirred with disgust. Then Archer turned toward Ariel. "This crime was against you," he said. "What is your judgment?" Ariel stood. She walked down the steps and stopped in front of Thomas. He looked up at her with fear, regret, and cowardice. But Ariel felt nothing of the love that had once lived inside her. Only clarity, only distance. "You called me foolish," she said, her voice steady and clear. "And maybe I was foolish to trust the wrong man. But trusting is not weakness. Betrayal is." Thomas opened his mouth, but Ariel continued. "You had the chance to choose kindness. You had the chance to tell the truth. Instead, you chose greed." She turned away from him and walked back to Archer's side. "I accept whatever sentence my king decides." Archer stood cold and absolute. Thomas is hereby banished from all lands under Thornhaven and its allies. His name will be marked as traitor. He has until tomorrow's sunset to leave these territories. If he is found after that, he will be imprisoned. Thomas broke into desperate pleading, but nobody cared. The guards dragged him away, and when the doors closed behind him, Ariel felt the last chain of that pain finally break. It was over. That same afternoon, Ariel sent for her father. Lord Cedric entered carefully, as though he no longer trusted the ground under his own feet. This time, Ariel remained standing while he sat. The difference in power was impossible to miss. "You sold me," Ariel said quietly, "like I was land, like I was a bargain to be made." He opened his mouth, but she lifted a hand. "No, today, you listen." And for the first time in her life, he did. Ariel told him exactly what he had done, how he had raised her to be useful, not loved, how he had never once asked what she wanted, how he had prepared her to serve ambition instead of giving her a life. Then she placed a document in front of him, a formal renunciation. If he signed it, Valamore would lose every claim over her, no control, no interference, no using her name for alliances, no right to shape her life again. "If you sign this," Ariel said, "then maybe someday we can build something new. But it will be on my terms, not yours." Lord Cedric looked at the paper with trembling hands, then slowly, painfully, he broke. Not as a lord, as a man who had finally understood what he had destroyed. "I failed you," he said. "I should have protected you. Instead, I treated you like a tool. And I never once asked what it was doing to you." Ariel listened in silence. She did not rush to comfort him. She did not soften the truth. At last, she said, "I don't know if I forgive you. Maybe not yet. Maybe not fully. But I refuse to carry your choices like chains anymore." Then she pointed to the paper. "Sign." And with shaking hands, he did. Ariel folded the document carefully. "Goodbye, father," she said. "Not see you soon. Not we'll speak again. Goodbye." And as she turned away, something old and painful finally closed behind her. The next morning the carriage was ready. Eliza sat inside, excited and nervous all at once. Guards stood prepared, horses stamped against the ground, and beside it all stood Archer, waiting for Ariel. When she approached, he studied her face. "How did it go?" Ariel gave him a calm nod. It was necessary. He understood without asking more. Then he held out his hand. "Are you ready?" Ariel turned to look at the castle one last time. The towers of her childhood, the window of her chamber, the halls where she had cried in silence, the place where she had almost been forced into a life that would have buried her alive. And yet, now, looking at it, she felt nothing except peace. She placed her hand in Archer's. "I think," she said softly, "I left this place long before today." A slow smile appeared on his face. He helped her into the carriage, then mounted his horse beside it. The procession began to move. Ariel did not look back. There was no reason to. Thomas was gone. Bartholomew was gone. Her father had signed away his claim. And she was free. Through the carriage window she watched Archer riding beside her, golden hair catching the morning light, amber eyes flicking toward the carriage every now and then, as though he needed to make sure she was truly still there. Her mate, her king, her choice. And for the first time in her life, Ariel understood that she was no longer running from something. She was moving toward something. Toward Thornhaven. Toward a kingdom that would become her home. Toward a life chosen by her heart, instead of forced by another's ambition. Eliza looked at her from the opposite seat and smiled shyly. "What are you thinking, my lady?" Ariel lifted her fingers to the mark on her neck and felt the warmth of the bond pulse beneath her skin. Then she smiled. "The future," she said softly. "Only the future." And as the carriage rolled farther and farther away from the life she had left behind, Ariel closed her eyes and let herself breathe. For now that was enough. To be free, to be safe, to be chosen. And maybe, for the first time in her life, to be loved the way she always deserved. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for the next gem.